So I know I said we'd take a break over the Christmas period, but the reality is we can't allow ourselves to miss a beat because the Albanese government is using the pretext of what happened in Bondi to ram through draconian hate speech laws in the parliament early next year, early in 2026. And we think it could be as early as January that they might recall parliament to force through these laws. Now, these laws are going to be an abomination. They're going to destroy free speech in Australia. We've seen this in Canada. We've seen it in the UK. We've seen it in Ireland. We know how this ends, and we cannot allow these laws to pass in Australia. You may be feeling hopeless because Labor and the Liberals look like they're lockstep on this issue. But I know from past experience that we have managed to stop laws like this in the past. So that's why this episode is important. And thank you for watching. That's today on The Dr. Joe Show. So if you're watching for the first time on this channel, I encourage you to catch up by watching the episode we did on Bondi, where we foreshadowed that some of these things were going to happen. We'll link to it in the description below. I wanted to film this because from what we've been talking about with the drip feed of what we know already about these hate speech laws, we can really see that the writing's on the wall, not just in some kind of theoretical sense, but in a very real sense for this channel, for James and I, probably for you watching this, for so many ordinary Australians. If these laws pass, we will not be able to speak freely again. So what do we know about the laws so far? So the first thing we know is that Michelle Rowland is drafting them. What do you think of Michelle, James?
Not a huge fan, Doctor, of Michelle. I'm currently blocked on her Instagram, so I haven't been able to keep abreast of what's going on there.
Yeah, no. Well, the reason you got blocked was probably because you criticised her.
I criticised her.
For the misinformation and disinformation bill.
Yeah.
Would that be correct?
Which, if she has her way, will not be legal this time next year.
Yeah. So that bill was one to police free speech on social media. She wanted to have a Ministry of Truth through ACMA, the Australian Communications and Media Authority. She was going to give them unprecedented powers to look through all of our posts to determine what the truth is, and then they could just disappear. They could actually disappear even before you post them. So you'd press post thinking all is good, or you'd write a comment, but it would just even be disappeared before it was even there. And so when I said at the outset of this episode that although it looks like we've got no hope, that is the one example I have of where the people rose up and we managed to force an outcome. You know, stunningly, before the federal election, Michelle Rowland and Anthony Albanese announced that bill was going to be shelved. And they'd done 2 consultations on it, and there was just increasing community concern. And so I know that we can make a difference. In fact, on Instagram, I posted the first video criticising those laws that bill when it was proposed. And I remember you did a video too, even though it's not really your field, but you were that concerned about the implications for free speech. Michelle Rowland blocked both of us. But I did videos on that and exposed that as well. And then there were so many other good Australians that did that. And it is incredible that we stopped those laws. That's what I'm hoping for these hate speech laws. So the first thing we know is Michelle Rowland, as the Attorney General, is drafting them. That doesn't give us much hope because we know she's got authoritarian tendencies. The second thing we know is that Albanese can't even say the word Islam. So what's been really striking in all of the press conferences since Bondi, including in his first initial statement, is that he hasn't been able to identify Islam, radical Islam, Islam extremism as the threat, as the cause of this terrorist attack. In fact, he's mentioned sovereign citizens, he's mentioned neo-Nazis. And what we've now discovered is that ASIO, which is the security, the spy agency, ASIO boss Mike Burgess says that the agency is ditching Islamic and right-wing tags. They will now refer to religious or ideological violence. Now, what do you make of that, James?
It's interesting. I don't really know what I make of that. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's about the fact that there's a clear threat coming from Islam, like the terrorist threat around the world. It is not coming from Christians. And now, if you go on ChatGPT and you ask who's caused more violence, ChatGPT will say Christian states. Now, but they're including the bombing of Hiroshima, they're including Nazi Germany as Christian manifestations of state power, which they're not. So that's not the case. These Western democracies have Judeo-Christian roots, but I don't know if we could claim that these governments are acting from a Christian perspective. However, we can see that in the name of Islam, there's been countless terrorist attacks around the world. I mean, obviously 9/11 is a standout, Bondi another example, but in between those two bookends, we've got countless terrorist attacks, car bombings, suicide bombings, all sorts of things, right? And so, I think he doesn't want to name Islam as the threat. That's my take.
Well, yeah, and I mean, this is all kind of a little bit. This is. Yeah, it's a little bit vague. So we can only speculate as to what they're doing. But it also feels a little bit like they've gotten rid of the right wing one to offset the fact that they wanted to get rid of the Islamic one. Yeah. And I just kind of feel like, firstly, like I feel like these people are not to be trusted. So you feel like Labor is so in bed with the Islamic community that they haven't even been able to name Islam. They haven't been able to criticize Islam in any way, even on the subject of like being asked questions about radical clerics. What do you think about this? What was the name of the Richard Miles, yeah, the defense minister, and he was all just like, well, you know what I mean? Like, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if ASIO has been coming under pressure from these politicians to just like scrap any trace of Islam. And I always knew that this would be the way that it went, that this would not only not actually target legitimate threats like radical Islam, but actually end up really only being leveraged against white Australians.
And Christians and Jewish people.
Yeah,
anyone that is against the left, the radical left, it'll be leveraged against them.
Yeah.
I'm going to show examples of that in this episode. If you catch our previous episode on Bondi, you'll see the Richard Miles clip that James is referring to. You'll also see a clip from Chris Mintz justifying the need for these these restrictions on free speech. He celebrates the fact that we don't have the Second Amendment that the US has, a constitutional right to free speech. And he says that, we've let people in from all over the world. This is a byproduct of multiculturalism, that, if we're going to have a multicultural society, then we need to regulate speech. But again, that's really concerning, isn't it?
Yeah. So then just don't have a multicultural society. It's almost like we have this new religion here in Australia now, where it's like, well, so we're all multiculturalists, and so now we need to think about what needs to get axed in order to make sure that we can practice our national religion. So the first thing that is going to have to go, unfortunately, is free speech.
Australia Day becomes Invasion Day.
Yeah, and free speech is just another way of saying democracy. It just is, and I actually, if anyone has a good argument against that, please feel free to leave it in the comments. But the only way you have democracy is by people being able to observe the way that politicians respond to things, to criticize them robustly, sometimes forcibly, sometimes unkindly and uncharitably, and to ridicule them and make fun of them, because all of those things are valid communication strategies. They might not be nice communication strategies. They might not make you feel happy, like happy feelings in your chest. They might make your tummy hurt a little bit, but that is just how we discuss things as humans.
Yeah. And I think the point
sorry, just briefly, let me finish that one. So if you can't talk freely, then you can't make informed decisions at the polling booth, which means you no longer have a functioning democratic system.
And I have a really good point to add.
The easiest way to establish an authoritarian state is to shut down the exchange of information, be it through changing speech laws or going after the media, shutting down modes of communication between people. So there is no difference between democracy and free speech. And so, look, one thing we can just all agree on is that multiculturalism is just so important, and it's here to stay. And so what do we need to change? Well, speech, democracy, get rid of all of that. No, there is another option, and it's to get rid of this failed idea of multiculturalism, which has never worked anywhere in the history of the world. Look at the Middle East. It's not working there. It's not working anywhere. And so maybe that's the thing that should go.
Okay. All right. I think these are big ideas that we have to unpack. Now, I just wanted to make a good point of my own. You make so many good points, and people in the comments are always writing about your good points. So I'm just going to make a good point myself so that other people can comment on that. Okay. My good point is that, well, I hope it's a good point, but if free speech doesn't protect speech that offends, speech that makes people uncomfortable, then what does the right to free speech protect at all? Do you know what I mean? Like if we don't have the ability to say things that other people really hate, effectively hate speech. I get called hate speech. I get called that I'm propagating hate speech all the time. That's something that happens a lot. And that's because I do things like I put politicians like Katrine Hildyard in the Baby Killers Club. And that's because she's a Labor politician who actively pushes abortion up to birth and actively fights bills that save babies after 28 weeks or after 23 weeks, healthy babies that have to be born anyway.
Well, she's a passionate advocate for baby killing.
She really is. So. But, hate speech laws would prevent me from being able to call a spade because it makes her feel bad. It offends, it humiliates her. But, if we don't have laws that protect the right to offend people, then we don't have free speech.
Well, what these people always say is they say, well, we're still going to have free speech. We're just going to have speech that is kind. And it's like, So we're not going to have free speech then.
Yeah,
we're just going to be able to say stuff. Even in North Korea, you're allowed to say stuff that's nice to the dear leader.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Ask your
that's allowed. There's nowhere in the world you're not allowed to say nice stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to ask your feedback on this because a lot of people are saying that you and I are actually instigating hate. That we're not being nice. That really what we need to prioritize right now is unity. Even some Christians are writing this on our page, and I guess I wanted to know what you think about that.
I think that unity is a nice idea for like a children's woke fairy tale. I don't think it's such a nice idea. And it's certainly here's something that's interesting. Children's books certainly didn't used to emphasize unity. They emphasized eliminating evil from society. In fact, that's what every fairy tale is about. It's about identifying and eliminating evil. And so if you're a dumbass and you struggle to put two coherent thoughts together, which is unfortunately quite a lot of people, then you can easily say, unity, yeah, let's all just get along. Like, we don't want to be unified to everybody in the world. That's actually just something that I think we can all agree on, and I mean all of us. Do you understand? Like even the wokest moron, in the world can still agree with that. They don't want to be unified to everyone. Let's just say there was like a South African who was a neo-Nazi living in Australia, and they wouldn't want. And then let's just imagine they were criticizing that person, and I said to them, "Well, don't you think we should just have unity?" They would say, I don't want unity with that person. I want them out of the country. And I would actually agree with them. Yeah, piss off. Go back to South Africa. You don't represent our values, But what they want is groups that they don't want to, for ideological purposes, maybe because they're slightly browner skin, or they see them as like a protected victim group in this kind of Marxist woke ideology. They want to pretend like unity with those people is a good idea. And maybe it's a nice idea, but that doesn't mean that it's a good idea.
And as you just said, they don't subscribe to it themselves. The elites are lecturing us right now, virtue signalling around unity. There's that video circulating, a government ad of all these actors, Australian actors and news personalities telling us about how we need to end the division and the hate and we just need to unite.
Now, yeah, and unity doesn't, by the way, it's not always deportation. But it is always conversation. If you see something that is evil, or even if it's just wrong or just a lie, it's just a lie, you should have a conversation about it. What these people tend to emphasize is sweeping things under the rug, especially these Christian types who write on your page and go, don't criticize Islam. We should have unity. It's like, well, no, there's a problem here. And I want to talk to them about it. I want to talk to them about it if they want to talk. And there have been some I've been back and forthing with. And I want to talk to other people about this too, because there is a lie being told and I'm not comfortable with that. I don't like lies. They piss me off. Yeah. They just do. That's what woke ideology is, by the way. It's just lies. You know what I mean?
Islam is a peaceful religion, or that all religions are somehow the same. These are two lies that have been propagated for about two decades.
Well, and Islam is very fragile and very sensitive because it is really just a pack of lies on top of lies on top of lies. And it's just like woke ideology, say like gender ideology. it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. And so what people want to do is shut down your speech. They don't want you to remind them of the fact that it's nonsense. They don't like it when you do that. And one of the reasons they don't like it is because their position is not easily defendable. You know, there's a lot of things in Islam that are not easily defendable. The fact that Muhammad raped a 9-year-old child, you know, is not easily defendable. The fact that Muhammad said, you know, the Jewish Torah and the Christian Bible are the word of God. You should be judged by them. But then the Bible is so contradictory to everything that is in the Quran. Once again, it just is a contradiction that is insurmountable. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so once again, I think that Islam is very sensitive to criticism in the same way as woke ideology is sensitive to criticism, because a man cannot become a woman. You know, a baby does not become alive just when they're born, and they're not alive before that. These things are ridiculous positions. And so what they want to do is shut down your speech. They don't want to have to defend ridiculous positions. I got into an argument with someone on Instagram the other day because I've been just dropping comments on your videos, you know, as I want to do anyway. And
leave so many comments.
Yeah. And I said that the teachings of Islam actually instruct Muslims to commit violence against innocent people. And this woman, who was clearly Muslim, got offended, and she said, "How dare you?" You know, I could cherry pick lines from the Bible or any other text if I wanted to show the same thing. Now, I actually know that that's not true because as Christians, we are not taught in the Bible to commit acts of violence against innocent people. So her position is not as like it's not easy to defend, you know, and so she sent me a Bible verse, you know, which was a parable where which finished with Jesus saying, "As for those wicked men, bring them to me, and I will execute them." You know, and this was kind of a king who was in this parable playing the role of God. You know, she said, "Look, this is just as bad." But that is actually not. I think this is really important because people say, "Oh, there's bad stuff in the Bible as well. It's not just Islam." Okay. So once again, there's a very important distinction between the Bible just recording bad things that happened, okay, such and such executed a bunch of people, you know, whereas the Quran, which actually claims to be the direct word of God, not the inspired word of God, which is what the Bible is. It's a number of people were inspired by God, and they wrote various like poems, like, you know, books, whatever. But the Quran claims to be the direct word of God. Okay, conveyed via the Prophet Muhammad to the people, okay? And that actually instructs Muslims to commit acts of violence against innocent people. There's no way, you will not find that in the Bible. And I feel free, by the way, in the comments to point out why I'm wrong about this. But if you don't understand that distinction, you're either stupid or you're lying. Okay, there's no middle ground there. You're either dumb or you're lying. Okay,
it's very clear in Christianity. The commandments make it really clear, right? You know, do not murder.
That's
love
right.
God, love your neighbor. Like there isn't any call to violence in the commandments.
You would never be able to go out and murder an innocent person and then justify it in a rational way by appealing to the Bible. But you can in Islam. So, for example, look at this verse here. It says, "Indeed, the penalty for those who wage war against Allah and his messenger and strive upon earth to cause corruption is none but they shall be killed or crucified, or that their hands and feet be cut off from opposite sides, or that they be exiled from the land." So essentially what Allah is saying is it's okay to exile them from the land, so send them away. Or, just as good, you can kill or crucify or have their hands and feet cut off from opposite sides of their body. Now, this is a penalty for waging war against Allah and his messenger. So that's what we're doing here. Okay. So once again, innocent people, right? Now you might not think we're innocent if you're a Muslim, but that would be an insane perspective, because we are. I would just argue just our natural human rights would dictate that we are innocent people.
All we've done is exercise our right to free speech, to criticize a different worldview, ideological position, religion, right?
Which I would see as just a natural right that just comes with our kind of innate dignity as human persons, okay? So we are innocent, at least in that sense,
It's verses like that get me a little bit afraid for our future.
And then it says, strive upon earth to cause corruption. So corruption could just be anything that that violates the laws of Islam. So it could just be like not wearing a hijab, and yes, these lines are to some degree open to interpretation, and some much more kind of liberal Islamic scholars would interpret them as liberally as possible. But ultimately, what is waging war against Allah and his messenger? Both, like, Allah is God and his messenger is dead. And so really the only way of interpreting that, you can try and interpret it through like a liberal kind of Western lens. But how exactly do you wage war against Allah and his messenger except through words against Islam, like what we're doing right now? So Islam instructs its followers to commit acts of violence against innocent people. You will not find that in Christianity. Once again, if you have a killer argument for why I'm wrong about that, leave it in the comments. And otherwise, shut your mouth. Shut your damn mouth.
Although we respect your right to free speech, but just don't make stupid arguments.
I do make stupid arguments, but we will mock you. So.
That's right. So I think one thing's for sure is these laws aren't going to be used against Muslim people. Albanese's laws are being introduced under the pretext of Bondi, and the Liberals are so stupid because they're getting behind them. I've even seen Tony Abbott in recent days suggest that we really need laws against hate. They've been talking a lot about stamping out hate, but, can they not see that this is so dangerous? Because we already have laws around incitement to violence. So if someone is using their speech to encourage people to violence, those people can already be arrested, prosecuted, and subject to the due process of the law. We don't need laws that restrict speech beyond that, because we already have laws restricting incitement to violence. So this is now another huge leap in terms of an anti-democratic push. And one thing's for sure, we know it's not going to be used against Muslims. It's going to be used against people like you and me, Christians, Jewish people, ordinary Australians who want to criticize the government and want to criticize the radical left agenda. And the reason we know that is because these laws have been introduced in other countries and we've seen what has happened. So in the United Kingdom—
also because these people are incapable of criticizing Muslims, even radical clerics, let alone normal,
like the Labor government.
Yeah.
And in fact, I might just at this point mention a tweet by Avi Yemeni, who's written, "Funny how Tony Burke keeps uncovering Nazis across the country to deport, yet somehow misses the Islamic extremists in the terror hotbed of his own electorate. Protecting votes or protecting Australia? As a Jew, I know which group scares me more." I mean, that says it all. Labor is so scared about talking about Islam, about the threat that comes from this ideological worldview, that they put pressure on ASIO, presumably, to remove that as an identifier, as a tag. And they said, "Oh, well, we're removing right wing too," but they
didn't remove right wing though.
Yeah.
They removed Islam properly, and they removed right wing in name only. We know that, and also, what do you think is going on with the Liberals? Why are they being such dickheads on this?
Okay, so Alex Antic is a good Liberal. He's come out, he said he's definitely not backing this. He actually crossed the floor on hate speech laws that were introduced earlier this year. I honestly think that the Liberal Party has really changed. I mean, back when we had the Howard government in, and even in the Morrison government days, George Brandis, who was the then Attorney General, he was fighting for the right to be a bigot, for bigots to be able to be bigots, was essentially was what he said, because he recognized that laws restricting speech, even for people that we think have bigoted views, that has really far-reaching repercussions for democracy. And, if you think about it, it is the marketplace of ideas that should be the place where we, look at the views of someone that is, say, really bigoted, that, doesn't like me because of the color of my skin. We can unpack that in the marketplace of ideas. We don't need laws restricting speech.
Well, it's the only way. Here's the thing, right? You could restrict people's speech and ban hate speech. And in some ways, I think it's important to acknowledge that there is an argument for that. Otherwise, these people would have nothing to even proffer. Okay, so the argument is that hate is bad, therefore, why not ban it? That seems to be it. It's bad. It causes problems. So why not ban it? Okay, but then under that rationale, why don't we just ban everything that's bad? Lying is bad.
Yeah.
So let's ban lying. Let's create a lie disruptors in the police force, a lie disruptor squad, and anyone who's caught lying will have the police knocking on their door or, busting in at 3 a.m. and pulling them out of their bed,
Yeah. Well, let's look at that, because the Albanese government, even before Bondi, had directed resources from the Australian Federal Police into creating new hate disruptor squads. So, they should have been doing their job in identifying terrorism cells in our country and preventing things like Bondi. That guy they knew was on the watch list from 2019, and yet his father was able to get 6 guns, So that's what they should be doing. But even before Bondi, Albanese was creating these hate disruptor squads. The name is laughable.
Yeah. Not everything that's bad should be illegal.
Yeah.
Like, that's an actual thing. Should we have, adultery's bad? Should that be illegal?
Should we have adultery disruptor squads? That could get
adultery
interesting.
Disruptor squads.
Yeah.
Well, these Islamic clerics would like that. That's the thing.
All right.
But not everything that's bad should be illegal. I think this is a really important point, because I think a lot of people are really looking at this with half a brain. They're saying, well, hate's bad, so what's your problem with having hate speech laws? Hate's bad. I don't like hate. It's like, well, I don't like hate either, But that doesn't mean you ban it, because people actually, in order to be full functioning human beings with a genuine range of communication, a range of kind of opinions, a range of ideas, you actually have to allow people to do bad behavior as well. That's actually really important. Yeah. That's something that we often lose track of. We talk about how we're a pluralistic society and all of this, but part of that is you actually have to let people behave badly. Let me give you an example. So I thought that this was kind of interesting, because this was a guy who was a comedian called Graham Linehan, who was arrested in the UK for saying stuff that the secret police over there didn't like about transgender people. And something he said was, here's what he wrote. He said, if a trans-identified male is in a female-only space, he is committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls. Okay, so that's what he said. And this is what you get when you have hate speech laws, is you start to attack human expression. So his particular his particular brand of expression is humor, right? He's a comedian. He wrote that Father Ted series. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I used to watch it, and it's pretty funny. But his brand of communication, his thing, is humor, right? And what you start to get when you start to try and ban everything in the world that's bad, you start to ban lying, you start to ban adultery. It's just some things are not the role of the government, because although you might achieve some good through that, you might achieve some good through banning lying. You might achieve some good through banning adultery. You might achieve some good through banning hate. But then everything has to be balanced. And so the question is what's the downside? And we're seeing here with these hate speech laws, the downside is that people stop being able to tell frickin' jokes. No one thinks that he's actually inciting violence with that.
Yeah.
But then when you're outsourcing decisions around what is and isn't hate to some bureaucrat, like some who?
Yeah.
Like a middle-aged woman.
E-Karen.
Yeah, E-Karen, someone who's, worked in the Road Transport Authority for 20 years, and she's just got a promotion into the seat of like the safe, the truth, and the hate disruptor squad,
safe.
Yeah, she's done her time as a government bureaucrat, and she's finally like managed to get a promotion to heading up this. That's the person who is making decisions around this kind of thing. And it's not their job. That's why it's not up to the government to police certain things.
And in case you think we're overreacting, there's actually 12,000 arrests every year in the United Kingdom for speech, for things that people say online. And that amounts to 30 arrests per day. And, I'm going to give you some of the examples. So, for example, there's several people who've been investigated for praying silently outside abortion clinics. There was a woman that was arrested and put into the back of a paddy wagon. There was another woman who was holding up a sign, just peacefully standing there with a sign and, come and talk to me. And she was arrested. There's another man, Harry Miller, who was visited by police over transphobic tweets. There was another woman, Helen Jones, who was visited by police after criticising Labor councillor online. So just criticising a politician gets you arrested. Another couple was detained for messages shared in their parents' WhatsApp chat. That was Maxie and Rosalind. The former head of the Metropolitan Police Federation was banned from running for election because of a tweet, because of something he said. And then you've got Ireland, where Enoch Burke, a teacher who believes in a biological you can't even make this stuff up. He just, let me just finish. He honestly just believes in biological reality around man and woman and the differences. And he'll be in jail for Christmas. So he just because of a tweet, police came to his door and arrested him. We cannot be policing speech. We cannot be going down the route of Great Britain and Ireland. We just cannot do this. I'm going to show you a video now. Since Bondi, Albanese is putting even more resources into these hate disruptors. Check this out.
Essentially, the National Security Investigations teams are a flying squad of hate disruptors who focus on high harm, high impact, politically motivated violence, communal violence, and hate crimes that don't meet the threshold for terrorism investigations, but that we know drive fear and division. So far, this crack squad has charged 14 individuals across 13 investigations. The announcement today to boost the numbers of our hate disruptors, as well as planned changes to lower the threshold for hate speech, will make it easier for the AFP to take action quicker. It could be the difference between us just knocking on a door to warn an individual to an individual being placed in handcuffs.
Look, she's so excited about her new power. She's like, oh, goody.
Yeah, and I mean, they shouldn't be knocking on doors. Like, there's actual crime, like machete violence in Victoria, terrorist attacks in New South Wales. Like, there's
you could be charged under new hate speech laws for referencing those machete attacks. Thank you.
Or even just for criticising her. Apparently, you can get arrested in the UK.
I more mean because they're not white. The machete.
Racial hate. Do you think it would get me? Do you think I'd get a leave pass because I'm brown?
Depends what everyone thinks of you. If the left mainstream media hates you, then you're basically just white. And so,
well, they do hate me.
Therefore, you'll be listed as white. So you won't get a pass.
Look, I mean, this is insane that they could be knocking. What did she say? It won't just be a knock on the door. We'll actually now be able to take you away in handcuffs because of the things that you say online.
Yeah. They do have a bit of a point, though.
Why?
Well, because a lot of this, something that they keep on referencing is social cohesion.
Yeah.
And there is a point to be made for if you have people who are so fragile and sensitive and are so violent that they will come and murder you if you criticize their religion, like what happened with Charlie Hebdo in the UK, where someone drew a picture of the prophet, and so this whole office of journalists got murdered by a couple of guys with machine guns. Muslims. In order to maintain the social cohesion, you kind of do have to ban people from saying stuff. How else do you do it?
But that gets to the point that you said earlier about the problem with multiculturalism.
Well, that would be my
Yeah, like that's the wrong answer. It's
my approach would be to say, why do we have Australia? Why don't we just live in Syria? You know what I mean? If we want, shit. Oh yeah, Syria. I forget. Yeah.
God, really exciting rant then, and then because
No, seriously, I couldn't remember the bloody country. Why don't we just live in Ethiopia, where there's tribes that have been like slaughtering each other for as far back as anyone can remember. It's just a way of life. It's a part of the culture, It's kind of we hate them and they hate us. Why do you hate them? Well, because they've always been really mean to us. And then you ask the other tribe, why do you hate them? Well, because they've always been really mean to us. And so they just always at each other's throats and murdering each other. Literally with machine guns every day, So the question is why do we have Australia? Well, here's why. Because we don't want that bullshit. We want to have a free country where people are not constantly different, like warring ethnicities are not constantly murdering each other, where we all share one identity and one culture. That's the point of a nation. And so you don't say, well, we don't want that. We believe that everybody can live together in peace. Well, they're not really living in peace. Well, that's okay. We'll just make sure that nobody can say anything so that they can all live together in peace. What? That's your approach? That's your solution?
Yeah.
Well, then you're just the Middle East. Like, how is that any different? Or Ethiopia? Because that's what they do over there. They just have really strict rules around what people can and can't do.
So it's clear to me that we need a discriminatory migration policy, but that's going to be like that's people are just going to freak out that have even said that. You have so after we got rid of the White Australia policy, we had a non-discriminatory approach to migration. Then we've just had open doors all over the place. International students, working holiday maker visas have just been whatever. People want to come. Then we've got, the employer-sponsored visas and then the permanent program. But all of those temporary programs become a gateway to the permanent visa. And we saw that with the terrorist in this attack. The father entered as an international student and ultimately became a permanent migrant. But he never became Australian in the way that we understand Australia to be. He stayed very much with his home country of Pakistan. He trained in the Philippines in the art of terrorism, and he never became Australian. And if we want to stop this, then we're going to have some kind of discriminatory migration policy, even though that's going to sound really bad. And the Liberals are going to how would Susan Lee? Yeah.
Have like a convulsive attack.
Yeah. How would they, the alternative government, because obviously Labor won't go for that, but the alternative government's not going to be able to do this either.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think a lot of this comes on the back of the sort of radical secularism that has become so entrenched in Australia. And we have this idea of separation of church and state, which, I think that there's something to be said for that.
But that was originally actually to protect Christians. Did you know that?
I know that.
The origins of that was.
I know that, but I also think that like at least some level of separation of church and state is not a bad thing. But I think the original kind of idea of that, as you just mentioned, that was originally designed to protect the church, you know what I mean, from being corrupted by the state, not the other way around. And I think what has happened is people have become so strident about this idea that the state has nothing to do with the church that we've completely distance ourselves from the idea that we have a Christian identity in this country at all. And so then what that does is it opens the door for people to say, well, we're not a Christian country anymore. So, well, fine, let's just even forget altogether about bringing in people who are Christian or have Christian values. What's wrong with bringing in Hindus? What's wrong with bringing in Muslims? And people don't have the stomach for this conversation because it sounds really bad. Even when I'm saying this right now, people are going to say, wow, look at that bigot, look at that racist, whatever. Fine, you can say whatever you want. But the reality is if you want to have a progressive, Western, democratic, free country, multiculturalism doesn't work, okay? We are a Christian country with Christian values. We don't believe it is the right thing to put innocent people to death. Islam teaches that it is the right thing to put innocent people to death. Those two things do not go well together, okay? Muhammad, who was seen to be the template for how to be a perfect Muslim, raped a 9-year-old child. Okay. Now, these ideas are not compatible with freedom, okay, and with the kind of society that we have in Australia. Okay. I'm just saying a thing that should be self-evidently true. And so that doesn't mean that all Muslims are bad. Like, of course they're not. In the same way as not all Christians are good. Okay, but I do think that Islam is a fundamentally bad religion. Okay, you can be a very good Muslim if you're a bad Muslim, but I don't think you can be a good Muslim and a good person. So that's what I think.
So this is a really difficult conversation to have. I guess. There's different ways you could do a discriminatory migration program. One could be on race, one could be on religion. I don't know, but these are really you're going to offend people. We can't even have this conversation if we don't have free speech. I'm going to play you a video that. Look, it did upset me a little bit. I'm not going to lie because I'm Indian and it was about Indians. But I just wanted to know what you think.
This is our multiculturalism for you. Again, diversity is our strength. Might as well rename Parramatta to Little India. This is an invasion at this point, practically an invasion. Anthony Albanese and his crew have sold off this country. They've printed record amounts of debt, and to control that debt, they have imported half the fucking planet. This is now the modern Australia we're living in. Like I've said previously, multiculturalism is not a good thing. We need to protect Australian culture. Diversity is our strength. Can fuck off. And all these people need to go back home. So our younger generation can actually be priced back into the housing market. What's your thoughts?
So I'm not going to lie. I find that hard to watch. Like I am an Australian, but I'm originally from India. And when he says you guys just need to go back home, I just feel like he's talking about me. I feel like he's not talking about you. I mean, your family's an immigrant family too. I like this guy. I like this guy. I like a lot of his takes. But I don't want to use hate speech laws to restrict his right to free speech. I think he should be allowed to say this, even if it makes me feel a bit ick. And I think he should be allowed to say it. And I think we need to be able to have these conversations. But what do you think?
I don't think we should read into what he said there. It's easy to read in like racist intent. You know what I mean? And who knows? Maybe that guy's like a flaming racist against Indian people just because they're brown. But that's not what I got from that video. And I don't think you can infer that from that video alone.
What did you get?
That video would work just as well if you said, oh, this is like little Sweden. You know what I mean? If they're a bunch of Swedish people wearing their like leather shorts or whatever, you know. Maybe they don't do that. So maybe that's Germany. Anyway, you get the point. It would work just as well. You know what I mean? They should all go home. Because what he was saying was there are so many of them. That's what I took from it, you know, which he's right about. The government is bringing in way too many people into this country and no one can afford to buy a house anymore.
Yeah.
Australians can't afford to buy them.
Yeah. I'm Australian too. I'm just telling you.
That really came out of the blue.
Now, when you say Australians can't buy a house, we're not just talking about white people.
Look. We're not talking about white people, obviously.
Okay, so
obviously you're Australian, but but someone who arrived. This is the thing, man. Someone who arrived in this country 10 minutes ago is not an Australian. Mm-hmm. I don't care if like the left says, "Oh, these are Australians too." Why? What? Just because you said that? Because it sounds like a nice thing to say. I've got a mate who's been living in Japan for the last 2 years. Do you think the Japanese call him Japanese? Mm-hmm. Do you think that all of these leftists who would describe every one of those people as real Australians, do you think they would call my mate Japanese? White guy, looks like me, lives in Japan.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's Japanese. He's just as Japanese as a Japanese, you know, as like a person who's lived in Japan for the last, you know, their family's been there for the last 20,000 years. No one would say that because it's bullshit.
And all the leftists who are banging on about this sort of stuff and calling people racist because we say that Australia has to be something, that migration has to it has to achieve assimilation and integration. That's not a racist statement. It just has to. And I think that's why I'm Australian, because my family came here and we made Australia our home. And that's what so many migrants have done. But clearly, that's not the case across the board. We increasingly have migrants who come here and don't learn the English language, don't adopt Australian values.
And we increasingly don't expect them to as well.
Yeah.
We increasingly have this idea of like, we've gone from like the melting pot, the melting pot where everything melts together, to more being like just, well, actually, let's just turn this into ghettos. You know what I mean? It's like,
and something that we noticed, because we were in Melbourne recently and we went shopping in Brunswick, and you see it in any of these like woke kind of areas, like Potts Point in Sydney, St Kilda in Melbourne. You don't have brown people there. You don't have Asian people there. These white people that are so into not being racist.
The wokest areas in Melbourne, like around like Gertrude Street, Smith Street, like Brunswick type thing. The wokest areas are also the whitest areas. Yeah. You barely see a brown person.
Yeah. And if they have an Asian friend or a Muslim friend, they're totally...
It's not like you.
Yeah, they're totally...
Not like a radical, like zealot right-wing nut like you. But
no,
like
but they've got an Aussie accent like me.
Yeah, an Aussie accent.
None of these people hang out in...
You will not catch them hanging out with someone who's fresh off the boat.
None of these people are hanging out in Lakemba or Harriscap. They're just not doing it. All these people that are going on about racism. So look, I think my takeaway from watching a video like that, I can see you've got more to say, is just that, okay, it's uncomfortable. This guy's forcing an uncomfortable conversation. We're forcing an uncomfortable conversation around the issue of Islam. And I really feel for many Muslim people in our country who would be hearing what we're saying and just feeling really upset. I get it, because I feel upset when I watch this guy make this video about Indians. But I also think that we have to be grown up about this. The future of our country is at stake. And there's some really important conversations that we need to have. Like, is Islam compatible with Western values? And if Australia is a Western country built on democracy from Judeo-Christian roots, can we be having importation on a non-discriminatory basis from all of the countries in the world? Should we have let 3,000 Gazans in, as Tony Burke did?
Well, they don't even let Gazans come into no Middle Eastern country will take refugees from Palestine.
Mm.
Why? They won't. Well, because the history is not good. When countries have resettled Palestinians, they typically there's been massive social dysfunction. So I don't want to be too harsh to Palestinians, but what it tends to turn into is refugee camps that just persist for generations. And also what has happened is Palestinians have turned against the government, gotten weapons and initiated kind of terrorism and sort of even bordering on civil war. And so the Middle East wants absolutely nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
And which is not in and of itself an argument for not taking them. Like some other country can go nuts as far as I'm concerned. If you want to take them, go nuts, But why do we consistently insist upon making our country worse, turning our country more into the Middle East, just so that we can be good people? Good people. I don't feel the need, to be honest with you. I think that there's many ways in which we can be good people that don't involve destroying our country and bringing untold suffering upon future generations of Australians. It is not worth it. Yeah. Not everything is worth sacrifice. I think this is what happens when people walk away from God, by the way, is they get these Christian fundamental ideas of like self-sacrifice, giving, and they twist it in such a way that what you're sacrificing is your own children. You know what I mean? I'm sacrificing, well, I'll sacrifice the future of my children for these people. It's not the right way to do sacrifice, but these people don't understand these concepts.
And now we believe that every single person has human dignity and as a human has inalienable rights and worth, but it doesn't mean that every single human needs to live in Australia. And what's really clear is that the migration program is broken, that the temporary labour migration program has been used as a backdoor into the permanent program for way too long. Millions of temporary entrants who, on average, it takes about 9-10 years to then transition to permanent migration. They know that if they stay here long enough, they will somehow find a way in to become a permanent migrant. And we just have too many as well. So it's not, there's just so many issues which we will unpack. And some of you guys might know my background is as a migration researcher. I think to draw this to a close, I just want to say, with these hate speech laws that are on the horizon in January, we really need to be active. So we need to be sharing videos, writing comments, forwarding videos to people via email, writing to all of the MPs, really impressing upon them how much we care about this issue, like we did with the misinformation and disinformation bill.
And also write to these retards in the Liberal Party, by the way.
Yeah. We have to get the Liberals. Otherwise, and we did on the misinfo law. They didn't initially come out against it, but because they could see so much community angst, they eventually did. People like Alex Antic always were against it, and he's against these new hate speech law reforms. But what we need to do is now get more people to do that. Now, I wanted to say a few things. Like we've actually got, we shouldn't be introducing new hate speech laws. We actually should be backtracking, because already in Australia, we might not be the UK or Ireland yet, but we already have situations where, Kirralie Smith from Binary is being forced to pay $95,000 and to issue a court-ordered apology that they have written for her, that they're forcing her to publish on her website. Now, she is appealing this. But what's her crime? Well, her crime is that she tweeted about 2 male soccer players who are playing in a women's team in Sydney. That was her crime. She said that men shouldn't be in women's sport, and as the parents of competitive rock climbers, our daughters in the national squad, we just know that if there was a boy in her team, so that she was competing against, there is no way that she'll even make, any competitive rounds against boys because of the biological advantages that they have.
Yeah, and the International Olympic Committee, IOC, the International Olympic Committee now has also decided not to have biological males, quote unquote, competing in women's sport. So really, she's just saying a thing that is upheld by like the highest athlete, the highest kind of one of the highest sporting bodies in the world. So, and
yet in Australia, you can be forced to pay nearly $100,000. And look at the person that's taking her to court. It's Riley Dennis, a biological man. I mean, look at how wide his shoulders are.
Just another way of saying a man.
A man. Yeah, you're right. Like this is insane. And she tweeted about the fact, and she said, "How is this fair? That spot belongs to a woman." I mean,
you can't be fined for saying that. This is not democratic. Yeah. This is. I know it's so overused to say, "Oh, this is North Korean, that's North Korean," but this is actually just trying to bankrupt someone for saying a thing that's true is North Korean. Yeah. It just is.
Okay, and the left never stops. They never rest on this stuff. They only go more and more authoritarian. So the New South Wales Law Reform Commission, it's just got leftist academics on it, they have been proposing to broaden the definition of vilification in New South Wales so that it includes hatred, offence, and humiliation and ridicule. Right, so they want to.
That includes everything.
I mean, gosh, we're going to have a lifetime sentence.
And so what that means, when something really does include everything like that, I could walk down the street and someone could get offended just watching me walk past. Yeah. They could say something along the lines of like, my father was a real asshole and he was tall and thin like that, man. That causes me offense. You know what I mean? And so the government, so that person has been offended by my very existence in the world. Yeah. So what that means is then the government is filtering what offence they see to be as being okay versus offence that they see as being bad.
Yeah.
And then arresting all of the ones that they decide are the bad ones.
Yeah.
And people would say, well, we trust our government. Well, then you are just, you're
honestly the stupidest
You're special.
person.
You're a special person. You just are. You're special. You're an idiot. You're not just an idiot. You are broken. You're a broken person. You're a wounded person. Obviously something has gone wrong in your life. Maybe you have a problem with your own father. Maybe it's like there's something happening in your life where you've decided to transfer that role of like the Father, the authority, ultimate authority, God, and you've decided that needs to sit with the government. But that speaks to your brokenness, okay? You're not a whole person. You're not a well person. If you really trust the government with this kind of stuff, you're not a well person.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
It's the same people that trust the experts. Now, the New South Wales Law Reform Commission wanted to push it that way, but there was enough community opposition that the Minns government only amended hate speech laws to be hatred, incitement of hatred on the basis of race. But we can see from what the New South Wales Law Reform Commission was pushing that that's where they wanted to go. Now, if they had done that, it would have mirrored Tasmania, which has had these laws for a long time. And you will remember that Archbishop Julius Porteous, during the same-sex marriage debate, there was a leaflet, a little booklet that they produced called Don't Mess with Marriage that was sent to Catholic schools during that debate. And he was subjected to, a trans activist, Martine Daly, who wasn't at a Catholic school, didn't receive the booklet, but heard about it through his activist networks, went to the website, downloaded the booklet, read the booklet, felt offended by the booklet, had to force himself to feel offended by the booklet sufficiently to meet the threshold to take, the Archbishop to the Anti-Discrimination Tribunal on the basis that he'd been offended by it. This is what the playbook of the activists is. These hate speech laws that are going to be introduced, they're not going to be there to protect the Jewish people. We even know this from the UK, where these same laws, someone was actually investigated for a post warning of the dangers of anti-Semitism. These laws will not protect one single Jewish person, but they will be used against us. And we can see that from Victoria, which actually passed new hate speech laws this year, and it's the left's victim hierarchy. Every single group that is in there are leftist groups. And
except for one very tiny minority, interestingly enough, Christians.
Well, they're not a leftist group.
No, but they are a small minority group which experiences a lot of hate. Now, people would say, well, actually, the census data shows that X number of people in Australia are Christians. No, the census data doesn't show a damn thing. I couldn't care less whether someone checks a box on a census, okay? People who are Christians are people who go to church on a Sunday and practice their faith, okay? If you are not doing that, then you are not vulnerable to persecution, because you'll just immediately start checking not Christian on the census as soon as the heat comes up a little bit, okay? The only Christians who will be persecuted are practicing Christians, which is a tiny, tiny, tiny minority group in this country, and they are absolutely about to be persecuted under these laws. That is absolutely guaranteed. And in fact, that's what these laws are designed to do.
Yeah, and we're going to see a clip that makes that abundantly clear in a moment. But just the name of this law, it's called the Justice Legislation Amendment Anti-Vilification and Social Cohesion Act 2025. And you can see from this article in the ABC, Victoria's anti-vilification laws are set to be expanded to cover disability, gender identity, sex and sexual orientation. So these are left-wing victim groups that this legislation will now protect. And anyone who has gospel values, Christian values, well, they believe in same-sex marriage. They don't believe a boy can be a girl at the drop of a hat, or because they feel that way. Immediately they're coming up against this because now the left's religion has been embedded in the law. This is made abundantly clear when Jacqueline Symes was asked this question by a Liberal MP. Let's take a look.
Would Jesus being mocked in the Mardi Gras be considered hate speech and captured by this law?
Mrs. MacArthur, well, I don't. Is your Jesus? What attributes does the Jesus that you're referring to have? Like it's a ridiculous situation that you're putting. You're making a mockery of this legislation, and I find your question really offensive.
My gosh.
Yeah.
So, suggesting that Christians shouldn't be the one exception. This is something also, by the way, that people need to be really get their head around. If every group is protected except for one, that is indistinguishable from persecution. So people will say, well, we're not persecuting them. We're just not going to give them the same protection as we do other groups. Well, that's the same thing as persecution. You know, in our kind of Western understanding of law, we talk about without fear or favor, you know. And what that means is in order to have justice, you can't favor certain individuals or groups, because favoring people is the same as discriminating against other people. And so what we have here with these laws is a situation where it's a little bit like, let's just say the speed limit was 60 kilometers an hour, but everybody had been driving at 70 kilometers an hour on that stretch of road for the last 50 years. It was just commonly understood that you weren't to be, that those rules were not to be enforced. Imagine if every time a Christian was driving through there, they got a speeding fine if they were driving over 60 kilometers an hour. Well, that is when you have special protections for other groups against speeding fines, but then there's an exemption for Christians and they get the speeding fine. That is the same as persecution. There is no difference. And so what this woman here who's offended at the very idea that you would want to protect Christians, how is this hag here not being investigated under hate speech laws?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And will she be? Of course not.
No.
Because we let's be honest, we all hate Christians.
Yeah.
We would not be disappointed if they all ended up behind bars in this country. That's essentially the attitude of this woman.
Yeah. And Christians need to wake up. I just really need Christians to wake up. We saw in the federal election that Western Sydney, which are the same electorates that voted against same-sex marriage, they were the only electorates in the country that had a majority vote against same-sex marriage, and yet they still vote Labor. Now, I know people would say, oh, well, the Liberals are much better, but the problem we have is that Labor is so much worse. Now, I agree with you. The Liberals are really not much better at all, but the problem is Labor is just so much worse. They take us much further away from the truth. They take us much closer to an authoritarian state, much closer to Christian persecution. We saw so many Christians fooled by the fact that Albanese, during the election campaign, he couldn't be at church enough. He cried over Pope Francis passing away. He was at St. Patrick's in Melbourne. He was with the Archbishop in Sydney at St. Mary's. He was everywhere. In terms of Christian churches during that time, it was fake praying. But the minute he gets elected, does he swear an oath of office on the Bible? No, he doesn't, because he's an atheist. But Christians are so stupid that they vote for him. In these socially conservative electorates, you just cannot vote Labor. You cannot vote Labor because they will always make it worse. They do. So.
Well, you're voting for people who hate you. Like Anthony Albanese, if you're a Christian, he hates your religion. He hates your culture. He hates your ideology. He hates your way of life. And he wants to destroy it. That's just what we've seen from him. That's been his behavior. That's been his actions consistently. He's salivating at the thought of these hate speech laws. He's seen an attack coming from Islam, and he's seen it as a chance to try and make sure that no one can ever criticize Islam again. That's essentially, it's so cynical, but that's what he's done.
All right. All of this to say thank you for watching this very long episode. When we get started, we really can go for a very long time. Thank you for coming on the show again, James.
My pleasure, Dr. Joe.
And hopefully we can get him back next year. This will be the last episode, I think, of 2025. So want to say thank you.
Yeah, we've heard that one before.
I'm going to drag him in for an episode tomorrow. I want to say thank you for supporting the show this year. If you got to the end of this episode, you must have liked it. So please subscribe, or maybe you just hated it, but you got to the end because you wanted to hear what we had to say. But either way, just subscribe to the channel. It's the best free way you can support our work.
You're actually not allowed to hate it under the new legislation. So I need you to dob yourself into the e-commissioner.
And if you do get a knock on the door from the police because of something you've written online or because of something you've posted.
This episode, perhaps.
Yeah. Take your phone out. If you can see police through the crack, who opens the door without seeing who's on the other side? If there are police there, get your phone out, hit record, and send me the video of them either talking to you or arresting you because of the thing you said online. If one of these hate disruptors pays you a visit, get your phone out and make sure it's working and make sure you've got space because, that.
Make sure you hit record. It's very easy to forget that bit.
That's what we'll be doing because that's what we need to do. We, the people, have to rise up against this. It's going to be a very busy year next year as we fight the left's authoritarian tendencies. Thank you so much for supporting this show. Have a wonderful new year, and we'll see you in 2026.